Today is Transgender Day of Visibility, and I wanted to tell my story. When I was 5 years old, I want to say, I became aware of the concept of gender. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that there was boys and girls. I just thought that we were all us, and that's what it was. And I remember being at my grandmother's house, and one of my aunts came over, and she made these frilly cowgirl skirts for her nieces. And I remember thinking, these are super cool. I want one. And her, being my aunt, being super generous and sweet, was like, here, you can have one. I'll get it back at the end of the day. I didn't register that. I just thought, 5-year-old brain, here, you can have one. This is mine now. So I put on the skirt and I'm running around the house. I'm playing. My little brother was 2 at the time, and he's just chasing me around. And we stay with my grandma all day. They make these skirts. They finish up these little outfits, and then my parents come over and they're like, you have to give the skirt back so that she can take it to her nieces. And I say, no, she gave it to me. And they say something along the lines of, you're a boy, boys don't wear skirts, only girls get to wear skirts. And I remember that was the first time that I had ever thought about like boys and girls. And I remember thinking like, but I don't want to be a boy. And then there's this feeling of hopelessness that I just like, that's not something that I felt I could change. And I was sad. And I cried, and they took the skirt and they gave it to these little girls, and, whatever. That's the first moment that I realized something is different about me. It was the first time that I thought, I need to hide this, because their reactions made me feel bad. I went like that for basically 28 years. I remember nightly in elementary school, junior high, high school, college, I would just pray that God would change me and that no one would remember the old me. No one would remember me as a boy. They would only remember that I had always been a girl. I would pray for that nightly for years and years and years. I didn't realize that I could be trans. I didn't have any representation. What I had in the 90s, in the early 2000s, was serial killers and like perverts and joke characters in media and literature. That's the only representation that I was seeing. It was out there. There was trans representation, but I wasn't seeing it. I didn't know about it because I was living in deep red state, conservative city, conservative town. All I knew was that there was this thing about me that people thought was different and they didn't like. And so I had to hide it. And if I had to hide it, that meant there was something wrong with it. And that made me a bad person. And so it went. I had this deep shame, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking that I didn't want to be a guy. I wanted to be a woman. And it never went away. From 5 to 28, it never went away. I started working in community service. I met so many trans people that way and started realizing, oh wow, there are people that are just like changing their gender and just going out to be who they want to be and living their true selves. And somehow I thought to myself, but that's not me. I'm just a weird pervert. Those people are all beautiful and valid, and I'm so happy for them. But not me. I'm just a weirdo. And I had this job that I was going back and forth from different cities in the state to help kids in state custody reunite with their families. And I remember I had ripped the audio from a YouTube video of a psychiatrist doing like a 5-part series on how to know you're trans. And she ended the series by saying, one last thing, cis men don't worry about whether or not they're trans. I pulled over to the side of the road and cried because my egg had cracked and I had realized like, oh, I'm transgender. That's what this is. That's what this feeling I've had my whole life was. I don't know how I didn't gather that from meeting other trans people through my work, but I just hadn't. I thought my life was over. I thought I was going to lose my wife, my kids, my family. I remember weirdly enough thinking like, oh, at least I'll get to keep my job because my job was like very progressive. I then decided that I couldn't tell anybody because I didn't want to lose those things, because I cared more about those things than I cared about being trans. I sat on that for a month and I was miserable. And eventually I came out to my wife. I just blurted it out. I have no idea to this day like how I got the courage to do that. And to my wife's infinite credit, she just said, "Okay, we can work through anything. We'll figure it out." She said, "I love you for you." And she meant it. She stuck by me through my entire transition, and she's been my number one supporter and my rock. I was 30 when that happened. By the time I was 35, I had come out to most of my friends and some of my family, but I hadn't started hormones yet. And I had this deep itch inside of me that I like felt I needed to start hormones, or I was going to fall behind or something. It was a weird feeling I can't describe, but it was just like an urgency that I had to do it. And so at 35, I started HRT. And it was like breathing for the first time. It felt just right. My brain and my body weren't arguing with each other anymore. Everything just lined up. And it just went from there. I'm 38 now. Last year I had my name and gender markers changed. I got all my documentation changed. I did everything I could. I came out socially last summer to my greater friends and family, and some people didn't like it. Some people told me that I was making my family ashamed of me, or that I was hurting the people I care about. But mostly people were just kind and supportive, and I've lived as myself. It's been amazing. It's been the greatest thing to be able to just be myself. I wanted to get on here and I wanted to tell my story because I feel like on Transgender Day of Visibility, it's the most important to see other trans people and to see and hear our stories. I didn't have representation. I didn't have other trans people I could listen to and learn from growing up. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else, which is why I make my videos. I make my videos to just show that we can be here and we can be happy and just have a normal life. Because I feel like the media and society at large tries to paint us that if you transition, your life is over. And it's not. You can have an amazing, wonderful life post-transition. That's it. I love you. Have an amazing day.